The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. Wellness Education Cannabis Advocates of Nevada present the We Can 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with the We Can radio team. For the next 60 minutes, we'll take an in-depth look at the cannabis reform revolution sweeping the nation. Now, let's fire up the news hour. Here is the We Can radio team.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael McAuliffe, and with me is my co-host Perry Heitschuh, and welcome to the We Can 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour. We have a lot to talk about this week, as we do every week. Cannabis and cannabis reform are always in the news these days. It is something that that the people are aware of. They realize tax revenues and benefits to society, and so we are never short of stories. And
a
we want to bring
politically charged year, especially.
And a politically charged year. Well, we live in a politically charged country.
Yes, sir, we do.
So that's just the way it is. Probably the biggest news this week, in the past week, has been the long anticipated DEA ruling about cannabis in Schedule 1, and they were giving every indication in the early part of this year that they would be doing some sort of rescheduling down to Schedule 2. Previously, several years past, they had talked about Schedule 3 for cannabinoid-based products, and so there was every reason to believe that they were going to do something. And ultimately, though, last Thursday, they came out and they said, no, we still think marijuana is dangerous, and we still think it has no medicinal value, and therefore, we're going to leave it right up there at Schedule 1. And everybody was surprised about that.
The DEA administrator said that the science doesn't support rescheduling right now, and that their decision was based on the science that they had available to them, which of course is complete nonsense, but it's just something that they're able to kind of hide behind. But I guess they did kind of crack the door open for something, though. There wasn't a complete shutdown. They kind of I guess
yes and no, and we'll get into that. But as far as no science, it's because the DEA has kept their boot on the throat of researchers across this country for decades and not given them the opportunity to prove this science. And science has been done around the world, University of Madrid, University of Tel Aviv, as well as there's plenty of work that has been done in this country that is just not up to the level of formal scientific studies. I mean, though, if you want to look at not that it's a scientific forum in any way, but you can go on a YouTube and you can see people's actual stories, things that they have done, things that they have experienced, their changes in health. The anecdotal evidence is huge in this area. Now, government agencies are not set up to handle with anecdotal evidence, but that being said, you'd be surprised how quickly you can have a knock at your door from police officers based on anecdotal evidence of somebody down the street saying what you're doing in your house.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I'm like, they kind of use this to their advantage whenever they feel it convenient, and do not allow the average civilians to exercise that same amount of flexibility in our interpretation of what we believe is good for us. Seeing is believing. When you see a child that's having a seizure and they have the medicine given to them and they stop the seizure, and someone will actually have the balls to sit up and say, oh, well, you're faking it. And it's just like, well, okay, what do you say to someone like that? You just kind of have to move on and go to the next person.
When you're 2 years old, you're too young to even understand what the concept of faking it is.
Yeah, but you see, that's the kind of nonsense that we're dealing with, though, is people will just shove that away and cling to their dogma or whatever they're clinging to. I don't understand what it is, but like you said, how many people were outraged about this, or not outraged, but just a little surprised.
Well, they're surprised. A number of them are outraged, but the problem is with Americans, we are outraged. We're so outraged that we pick up our remote and we change the channel. And
yeah.
Then we've got
even Fox News. Fox News
that.
is kind of on the bandwagon.
Shep Smith. Yeah.
Well, Shepard Smith, he's a pretty conservative guy. I wouldn't really put him in our corner, so to say. And even he was just kind of very sarcastically jabbing at the DEA. Like, he really believes that it affects their credibility as an organization and as a governmental agency to continue to ignore not the will of the people, but the real deal science and the tax revenue. And he points to all these various talking points that we point to on a regular basis. It was kind of funny for me to see what most people in the cannabis industry would perceive as not the enemy, but, like I said, not a friendly news organization, to have one of their main reporters so openly jump on our bandwagon over that.
Well,
and it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
What he's saying is fair and balanced, though. And
well,
in this case, it truly is.
Yeah.
That people are just surprised about this, that how can the government keep cannabis up there with heroin and LSD and ecstasy and all these things.
And here's this other contributor that he was interviewing made a point to where that she says, it's weird to you that it's such a big part of the economy. You can order weed, I'm told, as quickly as you can get a pizza in the big cities, yet it's not taxed and it's not part of our economic system. I don't understand why that product should be eliminated.
Absolutely.
And it's just like purely from an economic Republican standpoint, they're trying to look at this in a way. So that's very, I don't want to say progressive
not only
of them,
Republican, but libertarian as well. That both from a market perspective and from the personal responsibility perspective, that you should have small government and people should be able to exercise dominion over their own private lives.
Absolutely.
And what's more private and personal than managing one's own pain?
Sure.
And actually, we're going to go off on that in just a little bit as well, because there are hearings coming up in this state. But one of the things that I found interesting is we're talking about the DEA refusing to rescheduling, and I get this from Paul Armentano, writing on Alternet, and Paul, of course, was a big gun at Normal for a long time, and he wrote that the DEA's intent is articulated in the August 11th edition of the U.S. Federal Register, and that's where they're saying that they're not going to change this. But if you look at closer inspection, the DEA makes it clear that its new policy is motivated by more than simply a willingness to increase the nation's federal supply of legal pot, rather because they said they're going to make several sites available for cultivation of cannabis for studies. But
they didn't list what the
criteria.
Yeah, so could UNLV potentially apply? Like, since it's a University of Mississippi that's now growing it, or is it going to have to be these other facilities? They haven't broken into that.
They made
yet,
broad
so.
brushstrokes, but they haven't filled in
Exactly.
any of the details. But maybe part of that is because it looks like the agency's ultimate goal looks to be domestic production of pharmaceutically produced medical cannabis products. And the agency said that the historical system under which NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, relied on is one grower in the University of Mississippi to supply marijuana on a contract basis, and they were designated primarily to supply it for federally funded research, not for commercial product development. Thus, under the historical system, there was no clear legal pathway for commercial enterprises to produce marijuana for product development. And so what they're looking at doing here is opening the door for large pharmaceutical company research. And if the pharmaceutical companies are the ones doing that research, this is a betting town, so you can bet dollars to donuts that it will be the pharmaceutical companies that are looking to be in control of the distribution of this. And you can look whether you're talking about Marinol, which is synthetic THC, or here in America, or GW Pharmaceuticals over in Britain with their Sativex, which is a whole plant extract. But
oh boy,
this is something where, once again, the mainstream American, the little guy, the small businessman, the mid-level entrepreneur, are angling to be shut out of this huge industry. And
certainly, and I'm not saying that I don't want the pharmaceutical companies to investigate, because they have the resources to develop these therapies through these plants and kind of isolate these various compounds with the kind of unlock the secrets inside of this plant that can, as closet growers will never be able to to do just because of the facilities they have and the amount of education that some of their scientists have received and things like that. So I applaud their willingness to want to investigate, but I do fear their overburdensome regulation that comes with developing these FDA drugs and getting it through to approval and things like that. And like you said, it's just kind of scary to think that a lot of industry that didn't really have a lot to do with the industry could end up controlling it in the not too distant future. And it's even more than that. Like, I've heard that in conjunction with that there is talk from the DEA of like the big alcohol industry and possibly even some pharmaceutical industries lobbying Congress now for a comprehensive drugged driving DUI bill to kind of put the lid on some of this, you know, and because we've been fighting that battle too. So we'll see how that develops in the next year or so. But I'm just kind of leery of big Fortune 500 companies being too deeply involved in the industry too quickly, and that's why I don't really care if it stays Schedule 1 for a while, or there are those who don't care if it stays Schedule 1 because it keeps a lot of the bigger companies on the fringes. They'll stay the hell away from it as long as it's still that federally illegal, which at least gives the industry enough time to prop itself up to where they can become a lobbying entity of their own before they'll either be able to have the authority to wield their own power in Congress or at least be bought out for what they're rightfully worth.
And in truth, moving it down to Schedule 2 doesn't do anybody in this industry a big favor.
No.
It is almost as restrictive as Schedule 1. And, I do not have a big investment portfolio, including a lot of pharmaceutical companies. And so, I have no stake in this. But I can't think that their motives are pure and humanitarian because the pharmaceutical industry, while and they're the largest lobbying group in Congress, while they have been supporting the DEA and fighting rescheduling of cannabis, at the same time that we've got a massive opioid crisis going on in this country, you've got the pharmaceutical companies making stronger and stronger and stronger opioids, and now marketing them to doctors and with government approval to prescribe to children under 11 years old.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's absolutely insane that you're taking this thing, and I don't believe the government or the pharmaceutical companies or anyone should get between a doctor and a patient and their pain relief. That said, there is a legitimate opioid crisis in this country, and one that we know and people in this industry know could be significantly ameliorated, reduced by having legal medical cannabis for people around the country. And so it's a crazy situation, but this is not something new that has sprung up. As Armentano writes, historically the interest in commercial drug development has largely been limited to the creation of synthetic agonists that mimic natural components of the plant, such as marinol, which I mentioned earlier, plus a couple of others that I am not familiar with, called Sizamet and Syndrose, which is it's a synthetic version of the anti-convulsive properties of CBD. And U.S. pharmaceutical firms can, for the first time now, contemplate becoming involved with developing and or patenting medicines derived from the actual plant itself, either in the form standardized of strains or in extracts they made. And so Thursday's ruling was not the first time that the anti-drug agency has courted big pharma. As reported back in 2011, the DEA previously acknowledged its intent to expand the federal government's Schedule 3 listing to include pharmaceutical products containing plant-derived THC, while simultaneously maintaining existing criminal prohibition on the plant itself. So Schedule 3, they're talking about marinol and other things like that, but they're still saying the plant is bad. And all along, as what they've been saying in the media about this is the plant is not medicine. You can't smoke the medicine. Ignoring vaporizing and ignoring edibles and all this sort of stuff.
Isolate the same exact things that get you stoned and put it into a laboratory.
Yes, but we'll make them through chemistry for better living, and it's an
it's
insane
outrageously
situation.
expensive, by the way.
Absolutely. The last time that I had heard, and this was several years ago, a 1 month supply of marinol was on the order of $1,400.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy. Now things are hopefully going to happen. the DEA is a subdivision of the United States Department of Justice, which is itself a subdivision of the executive branch of our government. And our president, Barack Obama, had previously said, well, I'm going to let Congress decide this, and this is an issue for Congress. And Congress, of course, has done nothing. And
they're not going to.
And they're not going to, certainly not in this session. And now you have the DEA, which is under the president's control, coming out with this. And I said for years the first black president was not going to be able to do anything about cannabis reform in his first term, and then I extended that and said, well, then he's got the second term midterms, so he'll be freed up after that. And now here he is in his final 6 months or so in office, and he still hasn't done anything. And with a stroke of his pen,
saying. He just says, oh, if you want me to change the law, you need to bring me a bill and I'll sign it. And it's just like, that's not going to happen. He knows better, but what is he afraid of? You think he's afraid of
ruining his legacy?
Ruining his legacy? What legacy?
We won't get into that debate.
Yeah,
but I do think it's exceptionally hypocritical of a leader, and whether that is Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, or Barack Obama, to have done illegal substances and freely admit it when they were younger, and yet still support policies that are putting those people in jail today. And you recall last week we were discussing about that Native American kid, 19-year-old with a gram that they at a federal
Mandatory
school,
minimums.
and they were looking at putting him in jail for a year.
I heard a pundit on television talking about how this, it's going to happen. Either Trump or Hillary gets in. Mm-hmm. It'll be the first time since 1993 that we haven't had a president that has admittedly smoked cannabis.
Right.
And that's very strange.
Very publicly, for many years, Donald Trump has avowed that he has not had so much as a drink, or a cigarette or anything like that.
I've heard him say that too.
I believe him on that. There are some people who go through life that way, and that's fine. Hillary, I just don't know. However, speaking of Hillary, though, we've got an article from thinkprogress.org that Hillary Clinton vows to do what Obama hasn't, reschedule marijuana. And so since we know that the DEA has just prevented this rescheduling, in a statement published by the Cannabis, Maya Harris, a senior policy advisor to the Clinton administration, applauded the DEA's concurrent move to loosen restrictions on growing marijuana for big business, and indicated that Clinton will go even further. And what she said was, and I quote, "We applaud the steps taken today by the Obama administration to remove research barriers that have significantly limited the scientific study of marijuana. Marijuana is also already being used for medical purposes in states across the country and has the potential for even further medical use. As Hillary has said throughout the campaign, we should make it easier to study marijuana so we can better understand its effects." And so as president, Hillary will build on the important steps announced today. I don't think they were so important, by rescheduling marijuana from Schedule 1 to a Schedule 2 substance.
She wants it in pharmacies.
Yay, Hillary.
She wants to put it in pharmacies.
Yeah, it's exact. Well, this is leading from what we were just talking about. This helps big business, and Hillary's a friend of big business.
Well, of course, she was executive counsel for Monsanto for a number of years, who was, of course, deeply involved in our agricultural supply, and there's a lot of bad press going around about them. They're genetically modified food.
GMOs,
And there are, I don't want to call them substantiated reports, but there are rumors flying around that they have paid universities to fire scientists who do research that come up with negative finding, or
absolutely. And you look at our friend Sue Sisley from University of Arizona, how hard it was for her to ultimately find a home to do these studies, and she's trying to help veterans.
Well, sure, of course, it doesn't matter. You're still a bad guy because you're a doper. Or even if she doesn't even smoke weed, she's researching it, and she's a bad person because of it. Or so when Clinton says, I'm going to reschedule marijuana and I'm going to help you guys, it's just like, man, like I don't believe her or Trump, to tell you the truth, because I've heard Trump go back and forth so many times on it, and he's like, I'm for medical, but I'm not for recreational. And then he came out, he's it's a states' rights thing. I'm kind of for recreational, and I'll let Colorado and Washington do their thing, but the Justice Department and the Constitution's the law of the land and the Attorney General and this, and it's just like every time I turn around, it's a different story. So the only one who's really consistent on it is Johnson, who's
Gary
a former CEO of a medical marijuana company out of New Mexico. I have no doubt that he's on the team. But
I've met him. He's a nice guy. I haven't smoked with him, but I've seen photographs of him smoking.
Oh, he just said, he admitted it, that he smokes recreationally up until this point. He said, "Oh, I got to quit smoking for the campaign."
Yep.
It's just like,
and I don't know that he had to. That was a political choice. Well, I'll tell you what. It's time for our first break, and we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. Stick around.
Nevada Pure is a premier, vertically integrated medical marijuana enterprise which offers top quality medical marijuana, great customer service, and a safe, private environment. We carry a wide selection of medical cannabis strains. Our knowledgeable staff will assist you in finding the correct strain for your condition. Our trained professional staff can educate you on various strains for your condition, methods of consumption, responsible cannabis use, and the wellness benefits of cannabis. We aim to help patients achieve a better quality of life. Medical marijuana is a medicine, not an intoxicant. It's about a patient's well-being at Nevada Pure. From the moment you make an appointment with us, your care, health, and well-being is our priority. Nevada Pure is located at 4360 Boulder Highway, Las Vegas, Nevada. Check out their entire menu at WWDBTV.com.
Attention medical marijuana patients. Do you know what your cannabis actually contains? Are there heavy metals, pesticides, or even mold? And what strength is it really? And is it really what you need? Well, the answers to these questions are simple. DigiPath Labs. DigiPath Labs is a Nevada state-approved medical marijuana testing facility whose scientists carefully test products for safety and potency, all within the state's rigorous mandate. You can buy with confidence and trust knowing DigiPath Labs has tested your medicine. If you're a licensed grower, dispenser, extractor, or edibles manufacturer in Nevada and want unparalleled customer service and consumer confidence, go to digipathlabs.com and find out what we can do for you. And as a patient, only go to dispensaries that carry the DigiPath Labs seal of approval. That's digipathlabs.com, DIGIPATH labs.com. Or call us at 702-209-2429. That's 702-209-2429.
And welcome back to the Weekend 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour. This is Mike McAuliffe with my co-host Perry Heitschuh. We were just in the last segment talking about the U.S. government failing to reschedule marijuana, and a lot of political news to go with that. And the odd thing is that the DEA is saying that they don't want to reschedule marijuana because there's no medical benefit, and they haven't proven any scientific studies. Yet at the same time, and we get this. This is from our reporter Jeremiah Jones, and it says the U.S. government finally admits that marijuana really does kill cancer cells. And a little bit of history on this, that back in 1973, the University of Virginia, which is a very respected university in the country, did a study for the National Institute of Drug Abuse that found in lab mice that cannabis compounds did kill cancer cells, specifically gliomas, brain cancer cells, and it took them and basically starved them of blood supply and caused the cancer tumor to shrink and eventually disappear. And because that was not in line with what the Nixon administration, which that same year was announcing the war on drugs, which was a war on hippies and Jews and Negroes and jazz people and various others, because that did not fit with their narrative. That report was buried, but ultimately the results were duplicated in 2000 at the University of Madrid in Spain on mice, and then in 2009, in a very limited trial with only 2 people, they found the exact same results. And so now the U.S. is coming around and say it does kill cancer cells, and that's years after, 13 years after, in 2003, the U.S. government patented certain cannabinoids because they acted as neuroprotectants in the brain. So the government has known this has been going on all along, and so apparently the U.S. government has added a page on the use of cannabis and cannabinoids to their official cancer advice website. And they advise that the National Cancer Institute, which is part of the U.S. Department of Health, now advises that cannabinoids may be useful in treating the side effects of cancer and cancer treatment by smoking, eating, baked products, drinking herbal teas, or even applying sprays under the tongue, sublingually. And so the government has a long list of medicinal uses of cannabis, including anti-inflammatory activity, pain relief, anti-anxiety, stress relief, anti-tumor, antiviral, relieving muscle spasm caused by multiple sclerosis, and many, many more. And so now the federal government is having this on their websites and is telling that, yes, this works. And yet a different arm of the federal government is saying, oh no, there's no medical benefit. It just makes one's head want to explode.
Who has the authority over who? That's the whole thing. There is none, really. It's just kind of it's just kind of laying there on the table for people to pick and choose whatever they want.
The Department of Health is the U.S. Department of Health who is saying that there is use for this, is an executive branch agency under the control of the president. And as I said in the last segment, the DEA, under the Department of Justice, is an executive branch agency under the control of the president. So much as I think he's done some good things in the country, I've thrown a lot of shade on the president for his cannabis policy, and this is an absolute example of that.
It's just another reason why people think that we really need federal reform for these laws, and the state-by-state approach really is not getting the job done fast enough, and it doesn't seem to be working. There's a story out of
let me just we'll get to that just one second.
Yeah,
let me just finish this off by saying that we regularly beg you people who are listening to this to get out there and register and get out there and vote. Early voting, absentee ballot, whatever. Make it easy on yourself. Get it done. I've got something even easier that you can do. Grab a pen, grab a paper. I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. Then I want to give you a phone number. It's very simple. Area code 202-456-1414 is the public line into the White House in Washington, D.C. I would ask any of you who are listening to this and who are interested in reform and are just outraged at the fact that things aren't being done, call up the White House. Complain. It is your, well, I don't know, God-given right, but constitutionally given right to let your leaders know how you feel. And this is a public line to the White House, and all these results are tallied. So, if you don't want to go to weekend meetings, if you don't want to go out there and march, you don't want to go out there and do other things, just pick up the phone, and that number again is 202-456-1414. Call the president and give him a piece of your mind. Be respectful. Be polite, because you're just dealing with a White House operator there who's working a job like anybody else. But get your point across and let him know how you feel.
Absolutely. Nothing wrong with having your voice heard.
I think I'm going to call him right after the show. So I hope you do too. So what do we have happening in New Mexico?
Okay, well, there's a gentleman named Raimundo Mafuro of Deming, New Mexico. He's a patient in the medical marijuana program down there. Filed a lawsuit in the fall of 2015 alleging the Border Patrol was failing to adhere to a relatively new law that he claimed should allow him to travel through federal checkpoints without the risk of arrest or of his medical marijuana being confiscated. His only source of medical marijuana is in Las Cruces, about 60 to 65 miles from his house. To travel between the two cities, he must pass through a federal checkpoint. This is, of course, a problem. State card, federal agency doing the checkpoint. Every single time there's trouble. Every single time. I mean, he's been detained dozens of times. Let's see here. District Judge William Johnson, in an April ruling, granted the Border Patrol's request for a dismissal, agreeing that the gentleman's argument for the injunction didn't have legal grounds. Johnson specified his decision was without prejudice, meaning the door was left open for the case to be refiled in another form. Seizure, not prosecution. So basically, they steal his weed every time they find him. And it's just like this guy's saying. He's like, these state-by-state laws do nothing to protect my rights. He's jumped through all the hoops, gone through all the process. He's sacrificed all that he's had to sacrifice in order to get this medical marijuana card, and now there's nothing more he can do. He tried to even sue the government to force the issue. They shut it down, and he's just like, what the hell am I supposed to do at this point? So, he's basically what the end of the article said. He's thinking about moving to just avoid the damn in trouble.
And that's essentially what he's going to have to do. I mean, countless Americans over the past 2 centuries have fought for, suffered, and died for our Constitution, really, for our rights, the Constitution that embodies who we are as a society, as a people. And, you know, in the Bill of Rights, that Fourth Amendment, that the people shall be secure in their homes and their persons from unreasonable and unwarranted searches or seizures, that is, you know, one of the central tenets of this society. Yet a few years ago, the United States Supreme Court, in a case that they heard, decided that because of immigration issues and illegal immigration, that anywhere 100 miles or less from a border was essentially a constitution-free zone,
that
and
includes
that those
the sea borders.
rights, including the sea borders, and that therefore anyone who's in that area does not have those protections that we were all granted under the Bill of Rights. And if you take a look at the map and draw, 100 miles within there, you're talking about over half the people in the country.
Much more than half the people. All of the population centers are on the coast: Los Angeles, San Francisco, Houston, Miami,
Exactly.
Philadelphia, New York City, Boston. I can go on and on and on.
And so an unelected Supreme Court, which is a co-equal branch of government, has decided that, no more Constitution for you.
No, they call it the no Constitution zone in some of the more right-wing websites.
Yeah.
And it's a big map they have drawn out, but it really is disappointing. And hopefully we can get this guy some. He has to be a medical marijuana refugee within his own state. It's very.
And what he would and I've been to Las Cruces, and it's a lovely town, and it's down there close to the Mexican border. So if he did not want to change his state of residency, but he wants to avoid this, he's going to need to move a couple hours north.
Yeah.
And he shouldn't have to do that. Once again, this guy is a state recognized and licensed patient, and the government has said, we're not going after patients. We're not imprisoning patients. Yeah, we know that's not so. But the idea is they say that they're not doing that, and yet how is seizing a patient's medicine and preventing him from getting relief, how can that be seen as anything other than punitive action?
It's just theft. And I thought that there was a clause in the Constitution or somewhere that said that we had the right to travel through the country unmolested. But that doesn't seem to be the case either. They can stop you for damn near anything. And
Full faith and credit, which is why, as you were saying in the first segment, that they're looking for a national DUID law. That's because some states have it, some states don't. Nevada has this per se law, which is arbitrary and.
They're rallying the troops. Like Mothers Against Drunk Driving and all of the organizations that dedicate themselves to putting the squeeze on those kind of things, which of course have noble causes, but they're really looking at this the wrong way. I heard a Mothers Against Drunk Driving representative at legislature trying to bash our bill when we were trying to get the nanogram limits raised about how dangerous it was. It's like, lady, you have no idea what you're talking about. My daughter got killed by a drunk driver. It's like, that is not what we're here for. But people look onto that and they're like, we feel so sorry for your loss and we can't let that happen. But it's like, what about the constant thousands and thousands of people who are being victimized on a daily basis? What about their rights? What about their civil rights? And I've really thought for a long time that the cannabis industry or this cannabis movement, it's a civil rights issue. This is the next civil rights issue.
Absolutely.
And people kind of chuckle when I say that a little bit, but to the people fighting this war and living under that tyranny, it's not so funny to them.
No.
When they're trying to be gainfully employed and not have their children taken away from them and live normal lives or even just come out of the cannabis closet to their friends and their colleagues who they go to church or go to, if their kids go to Sunday school with their parents, they can't talk about what they do recreationally because it might alienate them. It might get a call from CPS. They might call their job. Who knows what the hell may happen to them?
Absolutely.
And it's just, cannabis are the most downtrodden, most looked upon, and most abused subsection of our society left. We're not allowed to go to work. We're not allowed to go on amusement park rides. We're not allowed to handle our kids. We're not allowed to say what medicine we give our kids. We're not allowed to carry firearms. We're not allowed to have
commercial driver's licenses.
We're not allowed to do anything. We're not allowed to fly planes. We're not allowed to operate commercial fishing vehicles. We're not allowed to be involved in a lot of separate industries, and if you're a gaming operator, you're not allowed to be involved in the medical cannabis industry.
And I'm certain that you're not talking about, you're not a proponent of people, having CDLs or carrying firearms while they're stoned any more than if they were drunk.
You see,
and yet people can carry firearms when they're drunk.
Absolutely, it's the legal limit for having a concealed weapon is 0.2 higher than the DUI law. It's 0.10, not 0.08 to carry a concealed. I went through the concealed weapons course before. They yanked it from me for having a medical marijuana card and told me all about it. If you got to go to a bar, you got to be sure, if you're going to go drink with your gun, you have to be sure that you don't get too drunk with your gun. And it's just like, okay. So I was kind of trying to roll that around in my head. But still, it's just very sickening almost.
I do agree that it's a civil rights issue, and it comes to the point of personal responsibility and sovereignty of our own bodies. And I'm not part of the citizen.
That's where I was going with that. Is that people automatically think that we want to liken our movement to allowing people to get fucked up and do whatever they want, and that's not necessarily the case. I don't want people to be stoned out of their mind and go fly an airplane. That doesn't do anything for us. Trying to win hearts and minds, I guess, would be the official term or the Army's term or whatever. But we want to try to build bridges. We don't want employers to be fearful to have medical cannabis patients in their place of business. We just want people to be able to live their lives without repercussion for taking their damn medicine. I'm not exactly sure how to break through it. There was a guy on the Laughlin Buzz page, which is the Facebook page that has all the Laughlin residents that talk about what's going on, and they had a medical marijuana facility open down there a few months ago, and this guy's like, oh, it smells like weed and this and that, and I'm just like, look, first of all, it's right next to the dump, and the dump stank there for like 15-20 years, and no one really cared. But the day this place opens the door, you're going to try to lay the hammer down on them because they're trying to conduct business, and they've cleaned it up. It did stink a little bit. I went by and saw for myself, but they
like the dump didn't.
Yeah, exactly though. But they cleaned it up. They got some new filters down, and they're good to go. And I told the guy, and this guy's like, I hate dopers and I hate this place, and how could this have happened in our peaceful community? And I'm just like, these are medical marijuana patients. What the hell are you talking about? And he's like, if you sell drugs to my daughter, I'm gonna put you in jail. And I'm just like, where did you get that? From
Unless
our conversation.
Your daughter has a medical marijuana
card.
And
I'm like, I don't understand where you got that. I'm like, no one is saying that they want to peddle
they're
drugs.
Conflating medical marijuana with the legalization.
Well, and even if it was recreational, which I support also, it doesn't matter, because I saw an expose on ABC about they tried to have kids stand in front of a recreational pot store, and they were asking people to go fishing, basically, like, hey, will you buy me a joint if I'll give you some cash?
Just like they used to do with, or still do with six-packs outside of 7-Eleven.
I did it a lot when I was a kid. We were desperate when we were kids. We did what we had to do. Usually it was a homeless guy, but not one person fell for it. They had dozens and dozens of people walk through, and it really made the people who were doing the interview look like assholes because they were trying to paint the picture the other way.
I would venture a guess, though, that people who are consuming and purchasing cannabis at medical marijuana dispensaries are a little more cognizant of the heavier penalties that they would get from distributing to a minor than somebody
dealers.
who's just buying them a beer or a
they're
bottle
not
of
dope-crazed drug
night
dealers.
train.
They're normal people who just want to relax and do their thing. And that's the whole thing, is there's this conception among certain age groups or just among certain social groups. It does nothing to do with age. That has to say that, oh, well, if you smoke pot, you must be this deviant, this pagan, or whatever the hell they think you are, and you're going to sell dope to my kid, and you're going to, do what you can to destroy the fabric of our society that people like my parents, a pastor and a cop, have built, and all this kind of crap. And it's just like, I'm tired of that narrative. I'm really sick and tired of the narrative that you're a demon, or you have the ability to be demonized just because of your cannabis use. It's just insane.
I was in junior high and high school in the 70s. My dad was a Korean War vet, and he was very anti-drug, and he brought me up as very anti-drug. So through that time, through college, I never smoked pot. I never touched it. Didn't want to hang out with anybody because I don't want to say I was indoctrinated, but I was brought up that this was not something to be using.
You're taught to not like it. You're taught to hate it.
Which is fine, because the point I'm making is about this guy worried about his daughter. He is abdicating his parental responsibility to teach his daughter, his children, the difference between right and wrong in that household.
Right.
And if you don't want your kids to be drinking or drugging or screwing around or anything, then it's up to you as a parent to instill them with a strong moral code that they can say no. In that time, when I was in high school, I had people offer me pot. I didn't want it, and so that's the way to do it. And if parents are abdicating that responsibility, and if parents are not wanting to teach their kids right, it blows my mind that most of those parents, or many of those parents, tend to be on the right wing of small government and personal responsibility, and they're in horror at the idea of a nanny state. And yet in this area, oh, come here, nanny. I want you right next to me.
Well, it's like I told you, they just pick and choose. It's just one of those things. A lot of religious people I know do the same kind of thing. Mm-hmm. They'll slam their Bible down at you on one item, and then on the other side, I'm just like, that's not very, Christ-like what you're doing over there.
Genesis
yeah.
129. Let's there are numerous points in the Bible that you can show are I don't want to say pro-cannabis, but are certainly not anti-cannabis. And the people who come up with that, they can't find if you press them to it, they can't find a mention of cannabis in the Bible. It talks about about wine.
No, it's not really specifically mentioned.
Right.
There are interpretations that claim that certain, like the anointing oil was made with cannabis and things like that, but there are so many different translations. Who's translating it? Where are the original texts?
But there were no
prohibitions
prohibitions
against it. Was it in Greek? Was it in Aramaic? Was it in this or that? Like, who really has the authority to say what that really said? So I don't even really, give that, I don't really give too much to that. I look more to Genesis 1:12, like you said, the more broad stroke idea of creation is holy and people make it evil.
I've read the book of Exodus, and in the book of Exodus there are 74 different reasons to kill somebody, legitimate God-given reasons. Pot is nowhere to be found in those 74 reasons, and that was a pretty exhaustive look.
I don't know where Christians get the idea that marijuana is a bad thing, except for being told by the government, which supposedly, like you said, these right-wing people who more closely affiliate themselves with Christian dogma supposedly hate.
Well, if God created it, how can it be bad?
Well, it's just like I've heard my mom in Alaska smokes cannabis, and she told me, she's a devout Christian, very strict evangelical, all born again, the whole works. And she tells me about, she's on these online forums talking to these Christians on these online forums about her cannabis use, and they just can't believe it, that a Christian would, or someone would try to claim themselves as a Christian if they smoked this horrible narcotic or whatever. And it's just like, the narrative is basically this simple: if you smoke cannabis, you're gonna go to hell. And it's just like, I don't understand how that correlation is made in their head. Like, how do you come to that conclusion that because you smoke cannabis,
propaganda,
you're going to go to hell? It's just like, there's nothing, like, I guess I've heard it justified as, if you disobey the law of the land or something, that's not holy or whatever. But if you work to change that said law of the land, you're also still an asshole. So I don't exactly know. And render to God what is God's. But still, well, then pay your taxes. If we passed a law that said if you pay cannabis tax, you're still an asshole. Like, I don't understand what you can't break through that wall sometimes. It's very, very frustrating.
And we're not going to break through it now, but we do have to break through the wall to allow our sponsors a little chance to talk. And so we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Armin Yamanijan, CEO of Essence Dispensaries, and I'd like to let you know a little bit about our company. As a completely complimentary service, our on-site nurse is here to meet with any patient or non-patient to discuss dosing and best practices. We have 3 convenient locations. We have one location on Tropicana between Decatur and Jones, which is our west side location. Our Henderson location is on the corner of Sunset and Green Valley Parkway, and we're proud to announce that we have the first and only dispensary on the Las Vegas Strip, on the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Sahara. Our prices are the lowest prices in town, and the highest quality medicine. Please come and see us at one of our 3 convenient locations or visit us at essencevegas.com. You can also call us at 702-978-7575. Once again, the number is 702-978-7575.
Getting Legal offers an informative and simple way for you to get your marijuana card. Why come to Getting Legal to get your marijuana card? We have a 99% approval rating and the lowest price in town. Avoid legal problems. Getting Legal can get you legal fast. Ready for a new start? Come in now and get relief from your chronic conditions affecting your quality of life. Call Getting Legal today at 702-979-9999. That's 702-979-9999. Or visit our website at gettinglegal.com to get your marijuana card today.
And welcome back to the Weekend 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour for our final segment today. So, a lot of people are smoking pot, whether they want to admit it or not. A lot of people are doing it, and we see CNN has come up with a recent article.
According to the poll released on August 8th, the percentage of American adults who say they smoke weed has nearly doubled in the past 3 years, according to Gallup. They're fairly reputable.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, trust them. According to those who participated in the survey, 1 in 8, or about 13%, reported current marijuana use, and 43% said they have tried the drug, an increase from 38% in 2013. The percentage of pot smokers was 7% in the 2013 Gallup survey. Now, when they say they use marijuana, I believe they use that
within
monthly.
The last month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the poll results were based on telephone interviews with about 1,000 randomly chosen adults. Marijuana use in the United States of America. I think that is a gross underrepresentation just because of what people are willing to confess over the phone to the CNN. Like, I do this with you for a living, for fun and all this, and people, I would still kind of feel weirded out about telling someone over
because
the
it's
phone.
not just time. It's the U.S. government, the SAMHSA, which is it's a mental health federal agency, and whether it was the U.S. government calling or Time Magazine or CNN or anybody I didn't know and starts asking me personal questions which have legal ramifications, I don't know how willing I'd be to share that with them.
Of course, people have a lot to lose. Jobs, children, except like I was just discussing in the previous segment, how risky this is. So yeah, for that many people to be so openly admitting to it just shows how...
without any basis for saying so, I've been guessing for years that the number of people who are actually current smokers are at least double those who would be willing to admit it to a stranger in a phone survey.
I'd like to think so. It's like the silent majority kind of argument. When they were talking about Scotland was going to vote for independence, I forgot whether it was a year ago or 2 years ago or however long that was. They swore up and down. All I saw on the TV was they're going to leave. It's going to happen. They're going to do it. The polls are in our favor, and we're done with the Brits. And then the polls came, and then when it actually came time to go down, a lot of people, the silent majority, those elderly people who really didn't want to leave, came out in force and kind of let their voice be heard. And it was one of those things, just because they were quiet about it doesn't mean that there's not a lot of people out there who really believe that was the best course of action.
But in the case of Scotland, they were also lied to by people in power, and they were told that something on the order of £137 million per week, which were being paid to the EU, was going to instead stay in Britain and be put into their own health program. And as somebody who's just come through major surgery, if the government wants to pay for your health, boy, that sounds great to me, and I'd vote to stay in that too. But within a couple of days after the referendum, the leader of the stay party admitted that money was not going to be going to health. That it was, he just kind of made it up. And Boris Johnson, who'd been the former mayor of London, agreed that we just kind of said that to get it passed. And Nigel Farage, who was leading that stay movement, resigned as his post as the head of that organization within a couple of days because they had friggin' lied to the people.
Oh, that's par for the course. It's okay for them to lie to us, but if we do it, that's we'll go to prison. But
it's okay. It's okay for law enforcement, the FBI, local police, or whatever, to lie to us in the course of their investigation. Absolutely legally protected. Yet if we lie to them, to save ourselves, to cover our asses, to cover a loved one, we can get charged.
Well, they call it the noble lie. It's okay as long as it supposedly benefits the will of the people, or so they tell themselves, And when you lie to yourself so much, you start to believe it. That's when it gets dangerous.
It does. So for these people who are admitting, I say kudos to you guys. It shows a lot of bravery. And just recently, Keith Stroop, who is the founder and head of NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, said that this is the year people need to come out of the closet in cannabis, and people need to tell their friends, their neighbors, their relatives that I smoke and the sky's not falling, look, I'm a responsible person, this and that. And that if we can do that and we humanize, it's so easy to demonize them. There's us, the good salt of the earth Americans. We'd never use that. And there's them, those druggies, those hippies, those Mexican rapists that Donald Trump is talking about and everything. So I think that Keith is right in this, that we're at a tipping point here, and that we need to say, look, it's us. I've as Pogo said in the comic strip decades ago, I have seen the enemy and he is us. And it is the exact same thing. If we can just let enough people know that, it's not strangers. It's not the them that's doing it. Maybe we'll have some movement on this. And we're getting movement in various cities in America.
Yeah, this is an interesting article right here. It's by Philip Smith from Alternet, released on August 1st, and the title of the article is "The 10 Stoniest Cities in America." Now, of course, a lot of these are very predictable. Which states have the highest per capita cannabis use. But before we get into that, there's a couple of regions that were mentioned, kind of as honorable mentions, that weren't specifically cities.
Because they didn't have an urban center, but they still had that many people in a larger region.
Alaska's northern coast was actually the second highest polling place in the country, with what was it, damn near 15%, 14.93% of Alaska's North Coast residents reported that they openly
let me just ask, because you're familiar with Alaska, you've spent some time up there. The northern coast, that to me sounds like above the Arctic Circle.
I haven't been to the northern coast of Alaska, to tell you the truth. There's a lot of rural communities.
That seems to be the really, really cold spot. And I can't imagine much else that people can do up there.
No doubt. It's just there's a lot of native villages up there and things of that nature, and a lot of those villages are not only dry, but I would assume they would impose similar restrictions on their cannabis, just because there's a lot of crime associated with alcohol.
Although Alaska decriminalized cannabis back in 1975, and then they kind of pulled back from that a little bit in the 90s.
Yeah, number 8 on the list out of the top 10 is Anchorage. 12.37% of Anchorage residents reported that they smoke cannabis, and the Alaska Supreme Court legalized pot possession in 1979. Prohibitions managed to undo that a few years later, but now the wheel has turned again, with the state ending marijuana prohibition in 2014, and Alaskans are taking full advantage. They smoke even more dope on the North Slope with 14.99%, but there's no cities worth mentioning up there. Now, of course, like I said, there are native villages up there and a lot of oil jobs. All those jobs, and strangely, this is another issue that we kind of roll into. It's the jobs issue I was talking about. All these people who work on these oil rigs, I get calls from my friends who do rescue, rope rigging rescue, and just standard rigging work, and they want to know, how do I pass my drug test? Because, they're the best climbers in the world. They want to go save people's lives. But hey, if you smoke pot off break, you're not qualified to work here, even though we flew you up here at our expense and pay you $100 an hour to do this. All of a sudden, you're not good enough if you smoke cannabis. So
but here,
we're desperately trying.
Have this beer with me.
As much as you want, for sure. As much as you want. And they're desperate to get that dealt with. So for those people who have so much to lose up there, to be admitting that, like you said, must be something to it. So we'll run through it real quick.
Spoiler alert, Las Vegas is not one of the 10 stoniest cities. But let's see, since most Las Vegans come from somewhere else, let's see if if your home is on the list.
San Francisco at number 1, 15.5%.
What a surprise.
Yeah,
Haight-Ashbury, go.
Yeah, half a century ago it was the hot spot. It still is. Denver, surprise again, number 2, 14.9%.
The Mile High, they don't call it the Mile High City for nothing.
Number 3, Seattle. Again,
a legalization state, right? And in none of these states has the sky fallen.
No, well, Burlington, Vermont is number 4. That's kind of been a northeastern
Well, that's Bernie Sanders territory.
Yeah, that's pretty sure.
Yeah.
But people think it's more conservative just because it's a little bit more rural, but they like their weed up there too.
Isn't Vermont? Is that Live Free and Die, or is
That's
that
New Hampshire, I
that's
thought.
New Hampshire? Yeah.
But then Portland,
Oregon, to be expected.
Boston surprised me for sure. I didn't see that one. Providence, Rhode Island. I knew that they had a medical marijuana program there. Didn't realize it was so popular. Anchorage, no surprise there. Olympia, Washington, another recreational state, and Albuquerque, New Mexico. They have medical there, but once again, I don't think they're recreational.
And you just mentioned New Mexico in this story about the guy who keeps getting searched.
Yep.
So
We'll get
you
to
know
that,
it's
we're running out of time.
Yes, we are, and it's amazing how quickly the time goes. But thank you for spending a little time with us. We strive to bring you current news stories and keep you on the cutting edge of what's going on. So please join us again next week, and we will bring you more Nevada
I won't
cannabis
have an
news.
opportunity to be here for the next 2 weeks, but you're
doing field reporting.
Yes, sir. I'll be doing some field reporting, but I'll see you when I get back. And thank you all again.
All right, we'll see you then. Bye now.